Well, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got a 2012 Toyota Prius. The customer's concern is that the brake warning message is on. We've already pulled the codes on it. It's got a code C1391. That indicates an abnormal loss of accumulator pressure in the brake system. All these hybrids, they don't run on engine vacuum for boost. They have their own little booster pump. So it's a pretty common problem. There's a TSB for replacing the booster and the accumulator. There was also a warranty enhancement that extended the warranty out to, I believe it was 10 years, 150,000 miles. Unfortunately for this customer, it's out
due to age.
But anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started with that. A couple things to let you know before we get started. Number one, this is a pretty expensive repair. I think we're at like $1,500 just in parts as is. And that's on top of, it's about 8 hours worth of labor. So even if you can do it yourself, it's still a pretty hefty chunk of change just in parts alone. And number two, I think, as far as I know, this is the only car that we've had on the channel that requires you to have a scan tool after we get done with the repair. There's a bleeding procedure that's very convoluted, and you have to have a scan tool in order to do that procedure. You can probably get it to where it's drivable, but there's a linear offset. There's some other stuff you got to do to get it to be right. That requires a scan tool. So anyway, let's get to it. All right, so first thing we got to do, you got to do it on pretty much any repair on Prius. Take this wiper cowl off. The wiper cowl is going to be, take the arms off is 14s. There's a cover underneath this one. You pop it off. These are 14s. You just give them a whack. Next up, we're going to get the actual plastic cowl part off. There's two little push type clips in either side right here. Push down, pull up. Then the rest of these, they kind of lock down onto the metal part. Probably have to take this off. Now we'll start getting our wiper motor off of it. The connector is just a push type. There's a couple of clips. These are all 10s. There's 4 of them. And the motor will kind of slide over because it's on a dowel in the back. Slides on that groove in there. To take this part off, these are all 10s. There's 525,600 or so of them. Now we're going to get this reservoir out of the way here. You can suck the fluid out if you want to. I usually just like to, there's 3 lines that go to it. I usually like to just pinch those off and just kind of leave what's in here because you're going to go through a lot of brake fluid when you go to bleed it. So we'll just take some of these and pinch them off and get ready to take them loose. All right, so these are all on with spring clamps. Doesn't matter which end you take them off from. I like to take them off at not the reservoir, but the booster and the accumulator, and take all this stuff out just so they're not in the way. Now we can go ahead and take our level sensor plug loose. This bracket, you can do it with leaving it in the car, but it kind of gets in the way. 2 strut top bolts are 14s. Next up, we're going to take this little little bracket here that goes onto this other bracket and down to the accumulator. It's got one wire loom in it. We're going to take that out. 10 mil, and I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a 10 mil right down there. We'll take those off. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and start getting ready to get this booster out of it. You might want to do yourself a favor and make note of where these lines go. We're going to be taking these 5 off right here, these 4, and then this one. We're going to bend and manipulate and just generally defile them in ways in which they were never intended to be. So you can either take a picture of it or mark them some way, or better yet, just watch the video again. And while you're there, like, share, subscribe, comment down below. Let us know how we're doing. We'll get those off. This connector right here, you just pull it, it'll come off. These are all 10s. If you live in the Rust Belt, you might want to soak these down in some penetrating oil first. On this red line here, there's a little bracket over here that's held on with a 10. That goes in right there. You're going to have to take that out. All right, so we're basically done underneath the hood for right now. That booster is held on with these 4 12 mil bolts. There's 1, 2, 3. I can't get a good look at it, but there it is, up there in the corner. 4 bolts. Also, if you look up, there is a, you're going to take this spring loose here, and on this pin's going to come out, but there's like a, almost like a cotter pin type of pin right here that you're going to pull it out, and that will let you, once this spring is off and that's out, you can kind of push that pin that direction to get it out. It's way too tight here to film any of this, but I figured I would explain to you what we were doing. So like I was saying in the car, when I was underneath the hood, or the whatever, you were there. This is that kind of cotter pin thing I was telling you about. So that goes in there like that, and that spring was here. So in the car, well, at least as I'm sitting, it's in here like that. The spring is here. You're gonna kind of have to pull these apart because that little barb kind of won't let you pull that out. Take your spring off, and then you'll be able to push this out that way. And then those 12 millimeter bolts. This next part is just all out war, trying to get this thing out. You're going to be fighting these lines and stuff. Just do the best that you can. So next up's our accumulator. The accumulator is the hardest part about this is going back in with this. These 2 10s that are right there, and there's another one that's kind of hidden behind that harness right there. They're kind of hard to get out, but getting them out is far easier than getting them back in. What we're going to do is we're going to leave this red line on. We're just going to take it out with it, and we'll transfer it over when we get it out. For the time being, we just kind of have our other lines sort of bent out of the way enough to hopefully be able to finesse this thing out. So we'll go ahead and start with our connectors. So to get these out, you're going to have to, there's like a clip right there that holds in the evap line and the fuel line. You can just kind of push that over so that those don't get in the way anymore. You also may notice while you're taking it out, these things may fall out once you get those two nuts off. It's cool, just pick them back up. Going back in with these is the challenge, so just keep an eye on these, because these kind of act like little shock absorbers for that thing to be bouncing around in. Don't lose them, but if they fall out at this part, it's not that big a deal. Those are the only two bolts on it. It kind of slides over this direction. What am I hooked on? There we go. These are those little shocks I was telling you about. The two with the inserts are the ones that the nuts are on. The one that's in the front just rides on this dowel right here. So it'll go on like that, and then the eyelet of the accumulator will go over top of that. So we're gonna have to swap over this red line to our new one. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. Also, our new one comes with that one little grommet already in it. Don't be surprised if when you go to put it on, you push it out. This part is very difficult to get lined back up. So now we'll go ahead and get ready to go back in with it. So that is what the one that's kind of on the passenger side should look like. You see that dowel was right in the center of the that grommet there. Same thing on this side. This side's a little bit easier to. You actually can't really see it in the camera, but those little inserts are in the center, and basically you just want those holes to be in the center, because they will actually, when you're trying to like wedge it in there, they will kind of jam through some of the sides and stuff. But that's how it should be when it's done, and that thing will kind of allow it to sort of rock around like that. These back in, and we'll get ready to put our booster back in. So you're going to take your old mounting gasket. Make sure you get that off the car, or if you're going to reuse it or whatever, that's fine too. Your new one's going to come with one, so it's easiest just to put this on the studs. Really what I wanted to show you here is I always look at where this this yoke, whatever you want to call it, is in relation on this shaft. This is adjustable, so I always make sure that it's as close as possible to the one that came out of it before I go in with it, because it's a lot easier to adjust off the car than it is in the car. So anyway, they look pretty close to me, so we'll go ahead and get this new one in. Also, do yourself a favor, and you're gonna orient this that direction, because this is where your brake pedal rod is. Up to you whether you want to take these out before or after the little plugs. I usually just leave them on. It's not that hard to get them out. I like to try to stick my head down look through that hole and see if you can get the brake lined up when you do it too. Makes things a little easier. All right, so before we go run inside the car and get things going in there, I like to at least attempt to get these started again. It's sort of easier to do it while you got a little bit of wiggle room, since you had the lines all bent around every which direction. So we'll go ahead and take these caps off, and we'll try to get as many of these started as we can. All right, so those are started. We'll go back in the car and we'll snug everything down, and we'll come back out here and snug everything down out here, and we'll get ready to bleed this thing. Go back on with this bracket now. One of these years I'll get these things lined up, man. Don't you worry. Here we go. Now what I do on my nut? Get our bracket back in place here for our reservoir. What we did was we drained our reservoir out so that we didn't have to deal with the vice grips and stuff when we go back in with it. It just makes it a little bit cleaner to do it that way. So we'll go ahead and get these hoses back on where they go. Before we forget, we're going to have to pop these, the fuel line and the evap line back in place. And we're basically good. Forgot to put this clip back on here. And bend her back down. So now, we'll go ahead and we'll put some fluid in it. You're gonna have to leave the cowl off of it because part of it will be bleeding this thing here. This is called the stroke simulator. So part of it is doing this. So we'll leave all this stuff off for the time being, and we'll put some fluid in it, hop in it with the scan tool, and start the bleeding process. So we went through our brake bleed procedure. Didn't bother to show it to you because, I mean, basically you're just hooking up a scan tool and doing what it tells you to do. And another reason I didn't show you is because it must depend on what you're using, because I'm familiar with the Toyota TechStream software, kind of the factory stuff that we use at the dealership, and it'll have you bleed various things in various orders, and then on the factory software, it will have you, it'll do the linear offset just on its own. We're using right now, we're using a Snap-on Verus, and it went through and we had to do various stuff, but it didn't do the offset afterwards. So when we got done, we still had lights and codes. The code was for a linear offset, so we had to do that as a separate utility. So it must depend on what you're using. This is the first time I've ever used something other than a factory TechStream software program. But anyway, you just do what it tells you to do. And it also is a lot better if you have somebody else with you. Joe was in the car while I was down there doing all the bleed stuff. So anyway, we got everything cleaned up. We're going to go ahead and stick our metal cowl piece back on and start getting ready to go back together with this thing.
Just so everybody knows, these windshields are not engine proof.
Ask me how I know.
Ask me how I know. A friend of mine cracked mine. Ran the engine in.
Some friend that guy was. Well, we just got back from our test drive and everything is A-okay, so wrap this one up. Full disclosure, guys, this one's not super fun to do. It's probably best if you have somebody help you along the way, preferably somebody with a scan tool that could help you along the way as well. But anyway, we got this one done. Customer's going to be happy about that. So listen, if there's anything that you think we could be doing better, let us know down in the comments. And while you're there, like, comment, subscribe. Any concerns, criticisms, anything you may have, let us know down below, and we'll see you on the next one.